Welcome to Ring Theory. Here we are, 6 months on from the finale of Amazon's Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. 8 episodes, a massive viewership, and a just as big contrast in the reviews. Despite this, judging by reports, Season 2 is well underway and they seem determined to march on with their 5-season plan regardless of the feedback they get. The release of Season 2 is planned sometime in 2024, with rumours it could even be released later this year if there's no complications in filming. In this video, I'll be looking at whether or not I think the show can be saved. First of all, I did mention there are a huge contrast in reviews, so with that, it's important to acknowledge not everyone was disappointed. There are some people who loved it. That is fair enough. I enjoyed parts of it, but was just left with a feeling of being underwhelmed by the end. For those people who enjoyed it, there is nothing to save. But for a lot of people, like myself, who are more familiar with the lore, certain changes and storylines were hard to swallow. Trying to stay positive for a second, on a recent rewatch, you can't deny that 99% of the show aesthetically looked great, even epic. Of course, one weird drugged up warg CGI aside. For example, when we first see Numenor, the Mines of Moria, even the depiction of elves sailing to Valinor, all lived up to expectations. The composer Bear McCreary also did a fantastic job with the soundtrack. If you listen just to the soundtrack playlist on Spotify, it does make you forget about some of the problems the show had. The problems came in the main with some of the plot and when the characters opened their mouths. A few examples being,
I'm good.
There's a tempest in me.
maybe that's a little harsh. In isolation, you could take quotes from any series and make it look bad. But there were a lot of times where I found myself cringing or thinking, no, don't do that, or don't say that, and it pulled me out of the experience. I don't want this to turn into a rant or a why Rings of Power is bad video, because that's not what I intend this to be. But let me pick one plot point and one lore point to focus on. With my plot point, why does anyone believe Halbrand is a lost king of the Southlands, just because he has a sigil on a small pouch? That is apparently enough for people to be chanting, "All hail the true king of the Southlands," and I wanted to like it, but when I saw scenes like that, I instantly thought people are just going to clip this up and ridicule it, because it doesn't make a lot of sense. One example of the lore being changed is this magical backstory of Mithril they've invented for the show. If you've watched my Mithril video, you'll know it's not really explained by Tolkien why Sauron was collecting Mithril deep into the Third Age. The reason why he was doing this would be something they would have artistic license to explore. But instead, they decided to use one of the Silmarils being activated as a power source underneath a battle between a Balrog and an elf. This really has no basis in lore and gives unnecessary frustration to fans. Again, as it is quite a common theme in the show, the scene actually looks incredible. It was just unfortunately hard to make sense of. Again, something vital I want to reiterate is that these feelings and criticisms come from me being disappointed after wanting it to do well, and watching it, wanting to like it. One of the appeals of The Lord of the Rings is that it appears so well thought out and intricate that you believe it, and it could have been a real lost part of history. This series felt a lot more high fantasy than, say, Peter Jackson's original trilogy that was entrenched in plausibility. Another more technical point I have is about the timing the show was released and how it didn't help themselves. Looking back, I feel it's hard to deny that being released week to week at the same time as House of the Dragon hurt the show. The first season of this Game of Thrones prequel was fast-paced, exciting, plunging their viewers into an already established world, and was getting fantastic reviews. Compared to the Rings of Power, the growing pains it was having whilst establishing its world were all the more glaring. Having a great fantasy series run at the same time highlighted all the more the comparatively slow progress of plot from week to week in the Rings of Power, and made the characters seem less interesting and compelling to viewers, subconsciously comparing them to the characters in House of the Dragon. this can be simply rectified by ensuring it's the only fantasy series of its type running during its second season. Despite all this, I'm going to be positive and choose to believe that this series can be saved. To end the video, I've put together some fast-paced problems that I'm putting a positive spin on, looking forward to the second season. The first one is the whole "who is Sauron" thing that lasted all season and became too obvious in the end. That is over. Hopefully now we can see Sauron with us as the viewer, knowing that he's Sauron, being his manipulative best in the Second Age. Another point is Gil-galad seems to have a tiny role in the first season. Surely we will have to see more of him in the second, and we will hopefully see him be more representative of the character Tolkien created. Although I would have much preferred the Stranger to be a blue wizard, it will be interesting to see what Gandalf and Poppy get up to. It definitely has fan fiction vibes, but some fan fiction can be good, so let's hope they've got something intriguing planned for them. In terms of the fight scenes, it unfortunately, in my opinion, didn't seem to get any better than the opening 10 minutes of the first episode. That is the only time where I thought the battle seemed epic. Surely, with all the money behind it and battles in the Second Age, we'll have some epic and impressive scenes to look forward to in this second season. As I mentioned at the start of the video, we are one season into a 5-season plan. This could be a huge positive. It means 5 years from now, we could look back on this first season as a blip in an otherwise great series. Plenty of TV shows struggle to end well or go on too long and it leaves a sour taste. I would rather a show start slow and build to a great finish, than start well and peter out. To flush this point out further, if they've already planned a 5-season arc, then surely there must be some great payoffs planted in this first or second season that we won't know are paid off until later on in the series. Again, I'm not sure how much I believe this, but I'm clinging to the hope that seeing several scenes, saying to myself, that's why they did that, or that makes sense now. To sum up, yeah, sure, Rings of Power ultimately was a bit disappointing, but it's hard to have a balanced debate on the internet these days. Things either have to be the greatest thing ever or the worst thing since records began. In reality, this show was somewhere in the middle. If you were such a Lord of the Rings fanatic that any change from the lore was going to offend you, then stop watching, you were never going to like it. If you're offended just by the initial trailer when you saw there were black elves or black dwarves, then stop watching, you were never going to like it. But for the rest of us with a slightly more open mind, I say go into next season with a positive outlook, and you never know, they may turn it around. At the very worst, we will get to revisit some of our favourite locations in Middle-earth, looking great and accompanied by a fantastic soundtrack. And finally, to answer the question, can Amazon's The Rings of Power be saved? I say, yeah, maybe. Thanks for watching Ring Theory. On this channel, I'll be focusing on anything and everything to do with The Lord of the Rings, Tolkien lore from the books, the original trilogy, and the new TV show. If you liked the video and want to hear more, please drop me a like and hit the subscribe button.